What's going on, everybody? Tom Castro from the Tom Castro Shooting Academy. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit that little bell. Become a follower of the page. I'm going to start doing a little bit more of these videos to kind of get out to you guys, kind of give you an idea of what it's like on how the process is when I walk stages, and how I not only do I walk stages, but when I break stages down after I get done shooting them. So this specific match was on January 2nd, the beginning of the year. It was before we had a big match in here locally here in Florida. So I wanted to focus on my fundamentals a lot on this specific stage. This specific stage required me, or these specific stages required me to really focus on my grip. It was something I really wanted to focus on a lot at this point of me switching over from carry optics to open. So I was able to have a practice before the major match that we just had, and I shot my carry optics gun, and I realized how much different the fundamentals are the same, but how much different the gun grip was, and how much I needed to change in the way I grip that specific gun, the way the recoil management needed to be taken care of, and all of the different things between the two different guns. It's a completely different profile when it comes from, when you're coming from a carry optics Canic that has a very skinny grip compared to a 2011. It has a much thicker grip, basically double the size of what I'm used to grabbing onto. So it makes a big difference when you get out there and you start practicing with those fundamentals, and you start focusing on those fundamentals and really focus on the way you execute it throughout the stage, not just part of the stage. And in this specific match, you'll see there was, I think it was our second stage of the day, that I really dropped the ball on the fundamentals, and it really cost me in the long run on the score, because I ended up missing steel until I ran out of bullets. It was, I just kept slinging rounds at it instead of focusing on, you know, hitting the steel and being on the steel before I pulled the trigger. That is something that I actually spent an entire day after this match. I left, went to lunch, and came back and actually shot this stage, reshot one of these stages over and over and over again. And then I was able to isolate my steel issues. I found out that I was basically just sweeping steel. I wasn't putting the gun on the steel and giving it an opportunity. I was just sweeping through the steel. I was predicting when I was supposed to take the shot instead of being on the steel, pulling the trigger on each shot. So that was a big difference in my shooting in the major match afterwards. It really helped a lot because I was able to go in and really focus on shooting and not focus on the mistakes that I had been making previously in those other stages. So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this video. I'm going to run the whole video, and then I'm going to break down the stages so you guys can kind of have an idea of what I did here. Here we go.
Production, man.
All right, so the match, I ended up winning this match high overall. I don't remember by how much. I don't think it was by much. I think one of these stages really kind of crushed me. But there was a couple of different things about this match that is important to kind of point out. I was doing some experimentation on my grip and focusing on a lot of those things. So it's not about, I didn't care so much about winning or losing. Obviously I want to win every time I hit the course of fire. But when you're really focusing and paying attention to something that you're trying to get better at, or you're just trying to shore up, not even so much that you're trying to improve, just something that you're trying to make more consistent. Okay. Because that's not really something that you're improving. I guess it is improvement if you can make it become more consistent, but the goal is to make it to where it's something that just happens. It's not something that I mentally have to think about anymore while I'm shooting. So it's really important when you're working on that type of thing that your focus is 100% on that. It's not on winning the match. It's not worrying about your score. It's not worrying about, really not even worrying about your accuracy, because your accuracy will take care of itself, especially for what I'm working on. When I'm working on fundamentals of my grip and making sure I'm gripping the gun properly and all of the time, then my accuracy takes care of itself, because I'm pretty accurate as it is. But then when I focus on those fundamentals, man, does the A's just print A's. It prints itself. I don't even have to try hard. I don't have to worry about where I'm aiming the gun. It just naturally goes to the A zone. It's just something that I've done 1,000 times. So when your focus switches from trying to win a match and you're focusing on getting better, it's amazing how it takes care of itself. The winning takes care of itself. You don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens. So let's get into this stage. Stage 4 was our first stage of the match. So we're going to start on stage 4. Obviously, I'm going to go through the whole match here and kind of give you guys a breakdown. So I turn the sound off because as I'm shooting, or as I'm rewinding and fast forwarding it just kind of makes this weird noise. So I kind of take it off and then I just talk over it. So one thing about this stage, guys, that was really important was the draw. It's something that we don't talk about a whole lot on stages like this, but when you are forced to go up range on the draw, it's not where the gun placement is, it's where the hips are facing. So even though my hips are, so for me personally, I have gone through many, many stages like this. So my goal is I always know to focus on the safety first, because if you don't finish the match, you're not going to win anyway. So it doesn't matter how well you're going to shoot if you don't finish the match. So this specific stage, my focus had to be on the exit first, which was on the entry, right? So the starting position was about a yard away from the front. It was a red dot that we started on. I actually built this stage. One of my buddies / students sent me this video of him shooting, and I told him there was a different way to run it. So I chose to rebuild this stage as close as I possibly could and kind of run it my way and show him the time difference in the savings. I ended up shaving off almost 2 seconds off of this stage after the match when I went and ran and did some practicing and kind of reshot a video for him on this specific stage. I actually might post that one. I haven't broken it down yet, but I do have a bunch of video content on it. So it just depends on how it comes out. But there's a lot of video on this specific stage on how I was able to shave off 2 seconds from my original run. So that's a big difference in scores and times by just figuring out the details on a stage. And obviously I wasn't trying to score a high hit factor. I was trying to find out the most efficient way to run the stage after it was all said and done. It didn't matter to me what my hit factor was. It didn't even matter what my time was. If I could find a more efficient way, that's what the goal was of me breaking down the stage for him. So, all right, let's get into this. And we'll get a little bit deep into these stages. So let me go back into the hips here real quick. The hips need to be facing ahead of the 180. So if your 180 is straight ahead or on your left-hand side, if your hip is turned directly at that 180, when you draw your gun, you're breaking the 180. That gun cannot break the 180. So in other words, you have to keep that gun in front of the 180, the hip, right? Because that's where your gun is at. So if your gun's canted like mine is, and it's more facing forward anyway, I really need to be facing with my hips facing straight ahead almost in this specific stage. And you'll see as I draw here, what happens is I draw the gun out and I immediately point it out back towards straight up range. So you'll see as I come up, look, as I come out, I go straight up range. I'm starting to run out. Now I'm going right to the target, but you'll see I never bring that gun to my left side or to the center of my chest. I always keep it down range so that I'm not worrying about the 180 here. It's hard to tell on this video angle, guys, and I'm sure some of you will bring it up because that's what we all do as shooters, but that gun is actually facing downrange at a 145, 150. It's just hard to tell on this camera angle. So right now, I could actually point at the target, and this is where I found some of the time. I could actually point at the target through the wall right now and not break the 180, but I was a little late on the gun, and this is where I lost a little bit of my time, and there's one other spot where I lost my time. So right now I could have had the gun up and started aiming a little bit sooner. Go through that. Now this right here is where you start to notice my grip, okay? Where I started to focus on my grip a lot. You can just see how flat the gun's sitting throughout that whole stage run there. And you can see here where I kind of lost a little bit of my grip. And actually what it was is, and it's hard to tell on this angle, hopefully you'll see it on the other angle, but I start to rush the shot. Instead of letting the gun settle, I rush the shot so it looks like I'm not really gripping the gun. So we'll get past this and go to the next part of the stage. So you'll see here where the gun's out. You'll be able to see the grip really good here where the gun's really sitting flat, and you can kind of see here where I kind of let it rush. I rush the second shot. So the gun's up and the gun barely comes back down for the second shot. And I'm taking a step into the fault line at the same exact time. That's where I ended up with an Alpha Charlie on that. That should have been a 2 Alpha, but because I rushed to get to the spot instead of shoot, that cost me a lot of time there, or cost me some accuracy there. But that stage is good. There's a lot of different places where, and I'll break this down real quick in case I don't get to the other video. But here on this specific stage, you'll see where the time lost in this stage is because I didn't go forward. I lost my momentum by stopping in this position right here. When I chose to stop here, that cost me the majority of my time. After running this stage numerous times, the problem wasn't that again, staying back, I could see it, and it absolutely feels faster staying back instead of going up into position there or going into that fault or the port. But when I went forward, I was able to keep my momentum moving. The problem when you stop is that you have to start again. You have to get started again. That is very difficult for most people to efficiently get stopped and efficiently start again. It's very, very difficult. And it's something that I really have, I don't want to say I've perfected because there's always something you can do better, but I've really focused on my movement more than I have my shooting, because my shooting just kind of was there. I practiced a lot. I worked on grip, fundamentals, all those things. So your shooting is there, but it's the movement that really saves you the most time in this sport. So as you notice here, I completely have to stop. If I would have moved forward into this position, I would have been able to gain momentum, even if I would have just taken a step or two. The only reason I would go forward is so that it gives me more time to shoot things on the left-hand side here. All right. All this stuff on the left-hand side through this port could all be shot on the move. The only place I really needed to stop or slow down was that piece of steel. But taking a step forward allows me to shoot the targets through this right-hand side. And you'll see right here, this one single target back here is the one that actually cost me the most on my momentum, because I had to slow down and shoot that target or I was going to go past it. If I go forward, it gives me a longer amount of time to shoot these targets inside this window, inside that opening right there. That's the key. When you start walking stages, is you start to find those little spots where everywhere else thinks, oh man, if I go forward a step or two, I'm going to cost myself time because I'm not going to the right-hand side. It's the stopping that costs you the most amount of time in this sport. Now you have to stop in some spots, but it's the stopping that eats up your time in this sport. All right, so let's go to the next stage here. So this specific stage, the big thing with this stage was I decided to ramp up my draw, which was fine. I'm really been struggling a lot with the new the new system of going to open from carry optics. I had my carry optics draw down to a 0.75. Honestly, a target like this, I would probably have a 0.6 something draw. And still see my dot, because I just practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced with that holster and that gun, and I still miss that gun. Not gonna lie. I enjoy open, but I really miss the Canic. The Plastic Fantastic to me it just fits me well. I can control it like no other gun I've ever shot in my life. It is amazing. Love that thing. You know, I really like it. So this specific stage, I decided that I'm going to let the draw rip, and I'm going to start trying to push my draw a little bit with the open gun. The goal is to see the dot. It's not just to draw the gun fast and pull the trigger. I can pull the trigger on anything fast and point shoot anything. It doesn't, you know, I'm not worried about point shooting. That's not what the goal is. The goal is to have a good draw, be consistent, and be able to jump into that target. Or be able to see that target and jump into that whole stage array and not be thinking, oh man, where's my dot? I hope I hit the target, all those kind of things. So it's a really big thing, because there's a couple things that go along with your draw. If you don't hit the draw, now you're fighting the entire first set of arrays or first targets to actually find the draw or find the grip, find the dot. So that's why sometimes the draw isn't as important. This specific stage, I had a great draw. I did not get the dot though. That was the one thing that cost me in this specific stage, is I did not get the dot. I had a great draw. I was dead center in the middle of the target. I didn't know that. And you'll see where I make a makeup shot because of it. And I wasn't confident in knowing where it was. Even though it was close, I wasn't willing to accept a Delta or even a Charlie. I didn't know what it was. It felt great. Everything was good. My first draw, my first grip, everything was good, but I wasn't sure. So I decided to take a makeup shot, and you'll see I ended up with an Alpha Charlie on this target, and I didn't know it, but the Charlie came from the sweep. So I actually shot, the first shot was the A. The second shot was the Charlie as I was sweeping through, and then I shot the back target. And then I had to come back from the makeup shot. It's because of the sweep, because the way it felt when I was leaving the second shot. I didn't pull the trigger and lave at the same time. I left and pulled the trigger. That is why I made the makeup shot. Obviously, I found out later I had an Alpha Charlie and didn't need the makeup shot, but I wasn't willing to take the chance, because that's a lot of times when you start ripping, you grip and rip. A lot of times that's where you get a mic and you're like, how did I get a mic at a target that was 3 feet from me? It's respect. You don't respect it. You just move on from it and you think, oh, there's no way I could miss that target. Well, I wasn't taking that chance. So we move forward here a little bit, and you're going to see in this where the grip on this specific stage is money. Like, my grip was money. My problem in this stage was I made bad decisions on steel. That's what really kind of ate me up. So let me show you what I mean. So you kind of see through the grip. And I'll break down a couple of things on this stage that I want to talk about for like how I made my decisions to run the stage that changed my time compared to everybody else's. Even with all the makeup shots on this specific stage, I still was one of the faster times. Obviously, I lost the stage. I had a mic because I ended up having a mic because ran out of bullets at the end. It wasn't worth the reload. So let me show you a couple of things that I did differently than everybody else did. So there is a target. So you had to shoot these 3 targets here. So it was this target, and then there was a target behind this barrel on the left-hand side. Let me move forward just a little bit. This left-hand side, you had to shoot this from the front section. Here is where I did something different than everybody else. There was, I don't know if you can see it on the video. Yes, you can. All right. There's a piece of steel hidden back here. Okay. There's a piece of steel hidden back here. On the left-hand side of that barrel, I'm going to move forward just a little bit. There's a piece of steel hidden behind this barrel. And on this left-hand side, there is this no shoot. All right. And this is where you start to save time because you stage plan it out of your stage plan. This is what, like I said, stage planning. And I know a lot of people a lot of good shooters disagree with me on stage planning. Stage planning allows me to shoot slower and still have a fast time. I want you to hear that again. My shooting, because the way I stage plan, allows me to shoot slower. I am able to move a little bit slower and not rush the shooting part, which I say a million times, shooting is the slowest part of our sport. I am able to focus on accuracy and execution because I stage plan down to the very last detail. Very last detail. I mean, to the T, like where my foot placement is. If I'm going to be on the right side of the fault line, the left side of the fault line, I run in the middle, all these different things. All right. And I'm going to show you where a few different things on this specific stage, that stage planning would have changed my score by 2 seconds. 2 seconds, and I would have had no misses on steel. And it was something that I didn't see when I was walking stages. The problem is I built this stage. So when you build this stage, so I built 2 stages that day. When you build this stage, you have this, you get in your mind sometimes, this is how it's supposed to be ran. And when you do that and you lock yourself into a stage plan and you come in closed-minded like I did, even though I built the stage, I came in closed-minded and said, this is the way to shoot it. You got to come here. You got to do this. You got to do that. Well, I did really good in the first half. It was the back half that killed me. So let me rewind this just a little bit and I'll show you what I mean. So this position right here, you'll see I start in the center. So I don't want to start all the way to my right because I have to clear that wall. That's the first thing. The second thing, the barrel on the left-hand side, if you stayed all the way to the right-hand side of this fault line where my foot is all the way up, you would lose that target really quickly. This left target right here on the left-hand side of the barrels. If I move forward on the middle, I'm not going to be able to save myself a transition. And I'll show you what I mean. Really pay attention here to my footwork as I ran this stage. So watch just this section here all the way into behind those barrels. Watch what I do. I actually take a step to my right, so I'm riding the right side of the fault line while I'm moving forward. If you noticed, I went all the way from the middle to the left-hand side of the fault line to the far right-hand side of the fault line. Well, why did I do that? I'll go forward just a little bit. By going forward here, by taking a right step on the fault line, I was able to shoot this piece of no shoot, which saved me a transition. What everybody did here was they ran up, shot the open target on the left-hand side, which you can see right here. That's a double, okay? They shot that target right there, or it's a single target, I'm sorry. They shot that target right there. Then they transitioned back to this double stack. There's a headshot and an open target on the top, so they're double stacked together. It's really hard to see them, actually, which I did on purpose. And then there was a piece of steel here. So what I was able to do is, instead of shooting and stopping, I was able to take that double stack on my right-hand side, moving. Okay, I was able to take that double stack, moving. When most people stopped, I was able to move and still continue on. That's where the time difference is for me, because I'm not rushing. I'm actually shooting the stage. I'm just out stage planning the time. I'm thinking about, how do I save time? What takes the most time in our sport? Transitions, movement. Those things take the longest amount of time. The shooting is the slowest part. Yes, you can shoot faster. You can pick up your splits. You eventually, at some point, your speed of your shooting has to catch up with your movement and your stage planning. But you can still take more time to do things if you outstage plan. So again, this is a great example. I guarantee you, at a guy at my level, Grandmaster, the transition from that double stack to the left-hand side was 3/4 of a second. Guaranteed. There's from 180 to 180 is always 3/4 of a second to a minute to a second, full second, easily. depending on the target you're coming into also. If you're shooting at an open target on the right-hand side and you're coming into a no-shoot on the left-hand side at a 180-degree swing, it's going to be a much longer transition. If it's open target to open target, that's 3/4 of a second to a full second, and that depends on what your hits are going to be also. You might come in and have a 3/4 second transition with a delta. So it all depends on, what your skill level is, obviously, but you can really outstage plan these times. You can take the times away and really save time by just stage planning. So let me move forward here and I'll show you what I mean. So now I'm going to shoot the double stack. If you look, I've never stopped my body on this stage the entire time. All I did was pause there. All right, I'll go full speed here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I never stop my body movement. I'm always moving forward. So here's where I made the big mistake on this specific stage. As I move forward, my plan was to shoot that steel. Okay. And it worked. I missed one shot on it. I think it was, let's see. So it's one. Yes. So I hit it on the second shot. My footwork was really shitty. If you look here, watch my body, how far left leaning it is. That right there is why I missed. It was because I wasn't underneath. My feet weren't underneath me. My body was tilted to the left and I just wasn't smooth and clean with my footwork. So here's where I made my mistake right here. This position where I'm standing right now, if I stopped right there, and I would have seen this during the walkthrough, this specific spot, I could shoot all 3 pieces of steel that I needed to shoot. The reason why that was so important is because of the next set of targets. So for anyone who's new to the page, who hasn't seen any of my videos before and never been to one of my classes or in my Insider Circle, obviously, I have a section, or I talk a lot about the most important target of a stage. It's the most important target of a stage is the last target. All the other targets are in our way, right? The most important target is the last target. It's the reason why it needs to be a priority and why it needs to be the most important stage or target or thing on a stage is because that's how you win stages. Whoever gets to the fastest, whoever gets to the last target the fastest with the best score wins. That's why time matters so much in this game. Anyone who says slow down and get your hits doesn't win. I promise you, they don't win. So it's really, really important to focus on speed. You have to have speed with accuracy, right? And the only way you get better is if you start to focus on those things, right? You have to focus on speed. Now, how do you make things faster without rushing and getting crappy hits? You stage plan, right? I think the key comment that I've made in this whole video is stage planning is important. It really is. All right. So if I would have stopped right here and stopped trying to move and just shot steel, there's a piece of steel in the middle. This piece of steel, there's a piece of steel in the middle, and there's a piece of steel back here on the right-hand side. All I have to do is stop right there. Now that's going to save me a couple things, and I'm going to show you what I mean, where it saves me. One, I'm not going to be just slinging makeup shots, okay? Because right now I'm in a rush to get out of this position. Why? Because it's a stop position. And I need to get to the last last target, which is that back left piece of steel that I'm going to shoot from the right-hand corner. Now let me show you what I mean by this. Shooting those pieces of steel, watch what I had to do to get to the next target. One, I had a drop step. That's a waste of time. I had to do a drop step because my body was so far left. So now I have a drop step, but look how wide my feet are. That's a huge step. That means I have no momentum when I push off. All I'm doing right now is standing myself back up. So if you look, I would say I've only made, I didn't even make a step forward. All I did was put myself back into position where I was leaving, basically. So now that's where this is where the video edit comes in, where you start to watch these videos and you start to see those things where you're making those mistakes. So as I exit, I'm going to come in and I end up having a gun jam here. I found out that part of the issue is that I wasn't roll sizing my ammo. For whatever reason, I stopped roll sizing my ammo just because it's an extra process. I haven't needed to with the Canic, But with the open gun, it seems to find whatever flaw there is. Even though I case gauge, there seems to find whatever flaw there is in a round. So I've gone back to roll sizing now, and I haven't had a jam since. So it seems to be the issue that I was having was a little bulge at the bottom of the base of the round. And it seems to be fixing the problem, but it's just one of those things where when you transition over to another division and you have to learn that division, you have to learn that gun, you have to learn the intricacies of that profile, that style of a firearm. So it's been different. It's definitely different than the Canic. The Canic eats anything I put in it. The open gun has so far, but it's a little pickier, but definitely a little pickier. So, all right, so let me go back here and let me show you guys where I was talking about, where if I stop here. Now, if I stop here, number one, I'm not moving anymore. That's the first thing. So I'm already settled and ready to shoot. I'm going to shoot all three pieces of steel standing here. This one in the middle, I didn't see this until after someone else shot it. I didn't notice it. I was one of the first two shooters, I think. I can't remember. I was one of the first shooters on this stage, so I didn't really pay attention to a whole lot of stage plans, but I also was so dead set that my plan was perfect the way I wanted it that I didn't even pay attention. So someone stopped right here towards the end, and it was the perfect stage plan, and I'm going to show you why. Shot the three pieces of steel. So now you're settled for three small poppers at 15 yards, I think this was, about 15 yards. But the key is that it sets you up to attack these two targets immediately. So immediately you can go from steel, steel, steel into the double stack, moving into position. I save a full yard, I save a drop step and everything by stopping in this position. Okay? No matter what, I was stopping. So there was no real trade-off whether I stopped here or I stopped here, but there really was. I just didn't see it. The trade-off was a full yard forward, being more stable, being ready to shoot sooner. Those are all things that I lost because of stage planning. All right. So now I come through. Let's just go right here. So now let's just say that's the position I would have been in already to shoot the double stack. I would have already have shot this double stack by now. That's how important stage planning is. All right, so move forward, have the gun jam, blah, 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 miss, miss, miss. So again, this will show you a little bit different angle of how I was able to attack the no shoot and allow me to move through this stage. You'll see what I'm talking about here. So as I come through, draw, bop, bop, bop. See how as I step to the right-hand side here of the fault line, and then I ride that fault line right there. As I come off, go to the open target, I'm coming in for steel. So again, I want you to notice that I'm always attacking. When I stage plan, I'm trying to always be attacking. I want my gun up the entire time. If you notice in this video, specifically this stage, I really never take my gun down. I never have to take my gun down. Yes, I didn't have a reload like a lot of other people did because I shoot open, but I'd never had to take my gun down. Watch. So as I come through, I keep the gun up. I'm staying aggressive the entire time. Turn, move, gun up the entire time. What really cost me again was this area right here. This is what cost me the most, was this specific area right here. It really got me. I didn't realize until afterwards, obviously. And then I went back and actually walked the stages with a couple different guys they did a little bit different variations in the front that I ended up putting all three of our stage plans together because they didn't do what I did in the front, but I did something different they didn't do the same thing I did in the back. They decided to shoot and transition and stop and transition back and forth. I didn't have to do that. So that was where I was able to hold my time compared to what they did in the front. The problem was it just created so much inaccuracies with the way I decided to shoot the stage plan, but that was also my issues with steel at the time. So now I've learned a lot about the steel and it's fixed a lot of those issues for me. So let's go into the next stage here. And this one was a very odd stage because it was a different way you had a couple of different places that you could start, but none of them felt good. Even this stage plan really didn't feel great, right? I mean, the problem is, when people design stages, you get this mindset of how you think it's going to be shot. You have no choice. It's kind of one of those things as a stage builder that just happens. You don't really have much of you start putting it down on the ground and you're like, well, this is what I want it to do. All right, cool. All right, but you could shoot it 6 different ways and it doesn't matter what you see, someone else might see something different. That's what I love about stage planning. It's about finding the things that someone else doesn't see. That's why stage planning is important because you find things other people don't see. And I'll show you this specific stage plan. I ran a little bit differently than the people that ran it in front of me. And I'm going to show you why, because this is where the time difference really comes in. So let's go through this. This is all basic, but I do want to point out one thing real quick on this specific turn. And you'll see I end up having a makeup shot. So I end up lifting my foot because I'm dumb. I don't know why. I put a lot of weight on my left-hand leg, which was fine because I had to lean to the left. The problem was I did not have sure footing when I left the no shoot, and I'll show you what I mean. So as I draw, I'm up on my toe. I never shoot on a toe. There was no reason for that other than I was trying to gain extra distance so I didn't hit the barrel, but I needed to set up differently. I probably needed to be a little bit more on that fault line, but it was a very odd position. I could have taken a step to my left, and I actually almost did. I almost moved to my left, but I wanted to kind of eliminate the movement of the draw of my body. I didn't want it when I turned, I didn't want to have to move forward and try to find my target. I believe the target on the right-hand side was a no shoot or a hard cover. I don't remember. So I can't see it on the video either. But if you watch as I turn, I kind of step up on my left toe now. So now if you watch, I'll start to kind of settle down, but it cost me an extra makeup shot on the right-hand side. So as I come in, I knew it was a bad shot, so I had to do a makeup shot. If I would have just turned and settled, I wouldn't have had the makeup shot. The problem is we get into this mindset that you got to pull the trigger, you got to pull the trigger, you got to pull the trigger. Well, pulling the trigger is fun. That's what we do this for, but it also costs a lot of time. So let's just say I'm shooting a 0.25 split on a no shoot at 10, 15 yards, whatever it is. That's a 0.25, there's half a second. Now, if I have a makeup shot at another 0.25, well, now I'm sitting there at another 0.25. Now I'm sitting there with a quarter of a second missing from my score. And because of my time, because of a makeup shot. Those are all things that you have to think about when you enter and exit positions. A lot of the times we come in super hot and we think, well, just let it rip, just sling around. Well, you sling around, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that, except for you better make it sure it's there. Because if it's not, that's where you end up with your mics and you end up with your lost time. So, all right, so let's go through this real quick. Come around, gun was up. Again, I actually started doing a little bit of GoPro video in the front of these stages so I could see different angles, try to show you guys different angles. But for me, the big thing I've noticed is it really shows my grip. It's something that other videos aren't showing me. So it's something that I really am glad that I started doing, especially for this video, because the focus was on the grip. But as I come around, pop, everything looks good on the grip. I had a trigger freeze there because the trigger freeze came because I was focusing on this reload. All right. I knew I needed to reload out of that position. So that was my focus, was to hit that reload. Well, you got to shoot the shot first before you hit the reload. That's really kind of important. So I take the shot, finish the reload, and I want you guys to notice something. And this is something that I preach to my students constantly. The reload is one of the most important parts of a stage. Why? Because you need bullets, right? You need bullets. If you don't have bullets, you cannot score points, period. So when I see people shoot, the gun goes off, the gun comes back down, they bring the gun back in, they drop the magazine, then they reach for their other magazine, and then they finish the reload. That's a 3-second reload. And I'm going to show you why it's important. If you notice, when I leave this position, and I will tell you, I'm not really good at reloading with the open gun yet. I still haven't figured out the controls. They're just not obviously in the same place as the Canic. So it's something that I'm still trying to figure out, but I still put a priority on the reloads, right? So I'm still working on obviously trying to get them to be as fast as I was with the Canic. Like, it's the mag drop is what I'm talking about. The mag drop is where I really kind of struggle with getting that button pushed to have that drop and then move. So as I run through, you'll see the magazine hasn't hit the ground yet, and I've already finishing my reload. So watch, boom, mag's still in the air. Mag's just now hitting the ground, and I'm finished my reload. All right. So I want you to really focus on, I haven't even really left this position yet, and I'm already starting to get the reload finished. So I have one step. So I have one step away from that reload position, and I've already got the reload done. All right. I've already got the reload done. That's key. That is something that I cannot emphasize enough. The non-shooting things are so important. So important. No bullets means no points, period. It doesn't matter how fast you get to a position if you can't shoot. It's very, very important. All right, so as we move forward, going to shoot the open target, steal, steal, open target. Now, I want to bring something up here. I could have ran to my straight ahead and shot these two. There's two targets right here. Actually, three targets right here in this position behind these barrels here. I could have ran forward and shot those three, but I would have had to have stopped. I would have had to have stopped. I wouldn't have been able to back out. I wouldn't have been able to back out because I had to have turned and shoot this piece of paper that's behind this barrel right here. Okay. So I decided to run left and then attack targets. I was able to attack targets instead of stopping, finding the next target and shooting some stuff. Okay. I was able to attack targets. Not only was I able to attack targets, but I was able to attack the second position. I guess this would be the third position or fourth position, but from here, I was able to attack the last position. All right. So let me show you what I mean. So as I come through, shoot, steal, steal, paper. Now I'm able to move and shoot into position. All right. Move and shoot into position. Very important to find those. That's where the time is. I never rushed that entire stage. I didn't have to. Everything was just smooth and clean. The only thing I'd really wanted to fix was I did not like how I entered this position right here. Instead of finding the fault line like I wanted to, I stayed a little bit short, and you'll kind of see I looked down at the fault line because this was just an awkward entry position. It really was. And then going into that no shoot back here, I didn't want to take the chance that one, I was standing out of bounds, and two, I didn't want to have to find it after I started shooting at the no shoot. So that was important. That was one thing I would have liked to have changed on this. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown video. I know it's a little bit long, but I decided that I wanted to break down the whole match, kind of show you guys a little bit about how I break down my stages afterwards, after matches, and kind of learn from them. I know, again, this is a little bit long, but this is what I do. This is how I go back and I break down my videos and I figure out the things that I could have done better. I figure out the things that I did well. It's important to find the things that you do well and the things that you do bad, because you can build on the things that you do well and just fix the things that you do bad. It makes the job a lot easier. Small little repairs are a lot easier than trying to change your whole shooting style, your whole system. It makes a big difference. That's one of the things I teach in the Insider Circle is I always teach one thing at a time. That's how you get better. You do not get better trying to have a great draw, have a good accuracy, try to be the fastest runner, it's too much. You can only do one thing at a time when you're getting better. So focus on one thing and you'll see a huge difference in your shooting. If you guys have any questions, hit me up in those comments. If you haven't joined the Insider Circle yet, you guys are missing out big time. I have a online training course where I have hundreds of videos in there where I talk about the mental. I go into all the shooting foundation where you need stance, grip, triangle, all those different things. And of course, I go into tons of videos like this where I do breakdowns and I break down stages for my students who are the master members, but I also do breakdown videos just like this and put this in my group that are exclusively for those guys, to where you can only get those tips and tricks from the Insider Circle. All right, guys, I'll see you on the range.